What would make Apollo, the radiant god of light and arts, rebel against his own father, the king of the universe? And what terrible price will he have to pay for this rebellion? This is a story of vengeance, born of unbearable grief, and a secret prophecy capable of overthrowing a tyrant. You will witness a cold-blooded execution, a defiant challenge thrown before all of Olympus, and a brutal duel that ended not just in defeat. It led to crushing humiliation, broken bones, and a shameful sentence that forever changed the god's fate. Discover how the great Apollo was cast down into servitude to a mere mortal, and what chilling secret lay behind the wrath of the almighty Zeus. Rage, all-consuming, primal rage that floods the divine consciousness, extinguishing the light of foresight. My eyes, capable of piercing the veil of time and seeing the interweaving of destinies, are now blinded. They see only the present, only this moment, burning with unbearable fire. My entire being is a string stretched to its limit. My muscles are cramping, screaming with tension, and my jaws are clenched so tightly that it feels like my teeth are about to turn to dust. But I don't care. I am here and now. A rare, almost forgotten feeling for someone who is used to soaring above the bustle of moments. Usually, only two forces can tear me from eternity and throw me into the whirlpool of the moment: absolute bliss or the bottomless abyss of grief. Now a third has been added to them: unrestrained, boundless anger. How could he? I always knew about the dark side of my father, the Lord of Olympus, the King of the heavens and stars. Our generation, the second Olympians, we all grew up on stories of his power, his wrath, his vindictiveness. We saw his punishment inflicted on Prometheus and his ingenious revenge on mortals through Pandora's gift. But even when he walked through the halls of his palace like a lion among lion cubs, we didn't fully understand. We didn't know why the stern Hades bowed before him. We didn't understand why the mighty Poseidon only mocked him boldly, but never issued a direct challenge. We didn't understand why the women of the court swooned at just one glance from him. We didn't know, but now I know. He skillfully hides it, but there is no true mercy in him. Nothing that would make him like us. He is cold as the ice of space. There is no heart in his chest, and if there is no love in it. I am his son. He rocked me on his knee among the clouds, and yet I never knew him until this moment. And along with the revelation of his true nature, contempt was born in me. I saw, too late to stop it, but I saw everything. I saw him descend from the heights, shrouded in majesty, and take the life of my son, his own grandson, Asclepius. How beautiful he had become, far more human than I. I cared little for the hardships of mortals, but not for my noble son. While I feasted in palaces, he wandered the earth, carrying his gifts. He healed the sick, set cripples on their feet, and removed the curses of an unjust universe from those who could not resist them. Pain, suffering, disease, all these were the gifts of Zeus, brought into the world through Pandora's box. So that's why he did it? Because the merciful Asclepius was driving out the very evil that Zeus had sown? He is my father. He is the king of the universe. But he must answer for this. I must ask the one who knows him best, the one who will understand how to strike. I send a mental call to Leto, his former lover. I call out to my mother. I feel his call, and the pain in it is a reflection of my own. He is waiting in the grove on the island of Delos, which he knows so well. I step onto a sunbeam and allow it to transport me. He stands, proud and somber, his form reflecting war. The bow is drawn, the quiver full of arrows. He bows before me, as befits a son, but there is steel in his bow. Tense muscles roll under the skin, tight as the string of his bow. My son, why these weapons? Do you blame me? You who knows me best? After what he has done, the blame lies only with him. You do not know why he did it. You cannot resist him in such anger. Spare me your maternal anxieties. If we are not to grieve together, why did you call me here? Because you are a Titaness, because you have seen him in full fury, because you know how he can be defeated. Tell me how I can slay the king of the heavens. No one is capable of it. Even Hades is not comparable to him in power. You lie to protect me, or him. You are hiding the truth. Once, in the light of the full moon, I shared a cup with Dionysus, and he hinted at a prophecy that slipped from the tongue of the no less drunk Poseidon. There is a secret that you elders keep. I don't believe that you don't know about it. Not you, one of his former lovers. Speak now. I hesitate. The words stick in my throat. I cannot hide the truth from his piercing gaze. I always knew that Poseidon was a fool, but this, he could doom us all. But I cannot lie to my son, not to Apollo. Perhaps he will become a better king. They say that the royal family always consumes itself. Don't speak in riddles. It means that the king's son always takes his place. When the sons of Cronus overthrew and deposed him, he uttered this curse: the son of Zeus will defeat him. And I am the son of Zeus. You, and what is his greatest strength? Why do Hades, Poseidon, and others bend the knee before him? Hades respects him. He will be eternally grateful for the rescue from the womb of the tyrant Cronus. And yet, he is the one who threatened Zeus, scared him enough to demand the death of my son, your own grandson. Yes, and Poseidon. There is no love for Zeus in him. There never has been. Why doesn't he rebel? Lightning bolts. Maybe Hades too, but mostly lightning bolts, created by the Cyclopes. You can hardly comprehend their power. So, without them, he can be defeated? He is still Zeus, the strongest of the Olympians. Apollo lowers his gaze to his bow as if weighing it. But I also have weapons forged by the Cyclopes. If you fail, he will strike you down and send you to Tartarus. Even now, after everything he has done, you are protecting him. I am only telling my son the truth. He was a powerful warrior before he received the lightning bolts. He is a powerful warrior even without them. He sits on the throne all day, ruling over everyone. He has become callous and weak. Perhaps, but no one will help you in this, not even your sister. As it is said, his place will be taken by the son of Zeus. Not a daughter, not a group, but a son. And that son will be me. Is there nothing I can do to dissuade you from this path? You know the answer. He took the life of my son out of fear of Hades. I will overthrow him, take his power, and then deal with Hades as well. But first, deprive him of his power. Thank you, Mother. Soon you will be the greatest Titaness on all of Olympus, the mother of the new king. With these words, he disappears, turning into an eagle in a mocking imitation of his father, and rushes to Olympus. I track them down at the foot of the mountain. He is not there today. He and Hera, his queen, remained in their chambers, mourning the loss of Asclepius. Hypocrites. I make my way past the marble columns to the place where the fire burns brightest, to Hephaestus' forge, the forge of the Cyclopes. The lord of the forge is also not there. He and the three immortal Cyclopes went to their second forge in Sicily. Only their sons are here, Elatus, Tracheus, Urius, and Halius. Only their mortal descendants guard the greatest arsenal the world has ever seen. And I strike. I send them word that they are waited for outside, and they clumsily come out. I enter the armory of the Most High. There, in scabbards along the walls, I find his personal collection. Many lightning bolts, each crackling with the power contained within. Perhaps I should take them for myself, but that would not be the point. I summon my own power and flare up like the sun. I break each of them over my knee. His lightning bolts are destroyed. Now it's time to deal with their creators. I leisurely go outside, as if I don't have a single worry. The fools are looking at the sky, searching around the peaks of Olympus for the Lord who, as I told them, is waiting for them. Great smiths, but otherwise dim-witted. I place an arrow on the bow, created by their own fathers, the immortal Cyclopes, and I release the string. The arrow snaps and pierces Elatus's eye, instantly ending his existence. His brothers look at me in horror and then run away. I place the next arrow. I overtake Tracheus with a shot to the calf. He falls and screams to the heavens. I finish him off with a second shot that pierces his throat. Urius and Halius run faster, but they cannot escape my art. I hit the first in the side, piercing his lung. I overtake Halius with an arrow to the back of the head, to the place where the skull connects to the spine. He fades instantly. I stand and shout victoriously. The gods pour out of the palace, looking in shock at the lifeless bodies of the Cyclopes' children. They recoil from the fruits of my wrath. Then I go to the throne room, and they follow me, full of awe. Titanesses, Olympians, even Ares and Athena watch, stunned. And there, with my divine voice, I shout so that the echo resonates throughout the palace. Zeus, king of Olympus, I, Apollo, summon you here to answer me. There is no need to wait. The huge doors behind his throne swing open, and he doesn't enter. He floats in the air. He looks down on me, his face dark with anger, his brows furrowed, his muscles tense. He is the very embodiment of rage. Everyone stands in a semicircle around me, holding their breath, watching and waiting. And he speaks. My son, we have much to discuss. He gazes at me, and if I weren't so angry, his appearance would inspire awe. But the fire of battle boils in my veins. I only smirk at him in response. Your time to speak and command is over. I, your son, declare that you are unworthy to be king. I, the father of Asclepius, declare that you are unworthy to rule. I, Apollo, challenge you. He looks at my bow, then at the bodies of his Cyclopes outside. I raise the bow to the heavens and shout to him, there are no lightning bolts left in your arsenal, old man, and your slave weapons smiths are all eliminated. Accept your fate, tyrant. In his chambers, Zeus sensed this call, this challenge, imbued with grief and madness. I know his pain, but he challenged me before the entire court. I must make an example of him. He thinks he has the upper hand. He neutralized my lightning bolts and holds in his hands weapons forged by the Cyclopes themselves. But these are lesser weapons, created in lesser times. He knows not what he does, and I must show him his delusion. Regicide, your time to fade has come. He roars, placing an arrow and sending it at me. It aims at my heart. He is as accurate as ever, but the arrow does not touch me. You forgot who I am, boy. With one movement of my hand, the winds, subject to me, deflect the arrow aside. You are a despot. I will take your place. He moves so fast that it seems as if an avalanche of arrows is falling on me, 20, if not more. But am I not the master of the skies? I surround myself with a hurricane, and his darts bounce off this wall. Some arrows break, others pierce the walls of the throne room. Some even fly off towards the watching crowd. Ares cuts one in half before it hits him. Others are not so lucky or fast, but no one is seriously hurt. Come on, boy. Tell me how you will crush me. Tell me how you will take the life of your own father. Yes, just like you took the life of your son, and his before him. The wheel turns, and I will crush you under its spokes. He soars into the air and circles around me, firing arrow after arrow. I simply stand and watch as each of them repeats the fate of the previous ones. None can penetrate my vortex. Then, to prove his point, I lower this protective burst and stand before him defenseless. His eyes light up. He thinks I am exhausted by this demonstration of power. Fool. As I told Hera, they have no idea what war between gods means. They have no idea how powerful we really are. He pulls back the string and fires his most powerful shot. It flies straight into my eye, and I catch it. The arrowhead freezes millimeters from my face. I break it in my hand and throw the fragments on the floor. He reaches for the next arrow, but his quiver is empty. He looks at me in shock, his anger melting as he realizes the depth of his predicament. Finally, but that's not enough. Now it's my turn. The first thing I learned in the Titanomachy, boy, is to reflect other people's attacks. And now it's my turn. I soar into the air and rush at him like a tsunami. He dodges, but I follow him. Apollo tries to break through to the doors, but I block his path to retreat. He can't escape. If he does, then perhaps he will grow like me, striking from the shadows, dissolving like me, slowly gaining supporters and experience. It will end now, or it will never end. He is fast, but in the air, in my realm, I am faster. I finally catch him by the leg, slamming him into the floor. The marble explodes from the impact, but he is a god. He is my son. He quickly gets to his feet, but only to have my overhead blow, delivered with both hands, fall on his shoulders. I hear his bones crack. He doesn't scream, despite the pain. He takes out a small but sharp knife and runs it across my chest. He freezes for a second, when the blade doesn't even leave a scratch, doesn't pierce my skin. And at that moment, I grab him by the throat with my right hand. His own weak fingers cling to my powerful grip, but he can't move it. I slam his head into the ground, again and again and again. I hit him in the face with my left hand, humiliating him with an open palm instead of a fist, which would end everything too quickly. Ichor drips from his face, his cheeks are cut, his eyes are already swollen and turning crimson. He hits me with his hands, vainly trying to make me let go of him. I grab his right forearm, squeeze and twist. His hand hangs limply as his arm breaks like a dry branch under a giant's foot. I let him go. He falls to his knees, breathing heavily. I grab him by the hair and lift him up, now hitting him with a clenched fist in the ribs and stomach. Ichor sprays from his mouth like a mortal's blood, but he grits his teeth, preparing for new blows. I let him go again, but as he falls, I feel the impact of the kick. He flies through 3 columns, and the entire throne room shakes. I approach the spot where he landed, half embedded in the wall at the far end. His body is broken. He is barely conscious. Against my will, I am proud of him, but he defied me. Now that we have established the truth, proven who is the ruler here, I must pass judgment upon you Apollo. It is time for you to join those who rejected my authority before you. He is too weak to even stand. He barely pulls himself from the wall, slumping to the floor and looking up at me. And finally, there it is, fear in his eyes. Someone throws themselves before me, clasping their hands at their wrists and bowing their head in supplication. It is my longtime lover, Apollo's mother, Leto. Zeus, king of the heavens, my former beloved. He is young. He is consumed by grief. He does not understand the challenges of ruling. He does not know of your hardships that forced you to take the life of his son, Asclepius. Mercy. In the name of the love that once bound us, in the name of the compassion I know you are capable of, please, do not send him to the realm from which there is no return. Do not send him to Tartarus. Can your wisdom not find a more fitting punishment for a boy who fancied himself a man? Can you not humble him without breaking his spirit forever? Is there no mercy left in you for a son who has lost a son? I beg you. I wait. I look into her eyes, then into Apollo's eyes. His face is a mess, his eyes almost closed from the beating. I look at the court. Everyone is in shock, holding their breath. The Titanesses and my sisters stand with wide eyes, knowing that Apollo is close to condemnation. The youth, my children, and the children of other gods and goddesses stand motionless. They have never seen me like this. Oh, they try to hide it, but they are trembling. I look at Ares, the only one who might not be afraid. Let's test that. For if the prophecy is known to his generation, then he, at least in his thoughts, is the most likely to fulfill it. Ares, I say. I command and gesture him closer. He does not hesitate. He approaches me and freezes at attention. Good. He knows. He obeys. I run my hand over Apollo and address Ares with instruction. I place my hands on Leto's hands and say, "Rise, my longtime love. For your sake, I will be merciful. I will not send Apollo to Tartarus. He has paid in pain for his rebellion." Leto begins to weep softly with relief. However, he took the lives of 4 sons of the immortal Cyclopes. There must be a price for this transgression. I look at Ares again. He has not moved. Good. Take this one, your brother Apollo. Tend to his wounds, and then descend to earth. You will deliver him to the court of Thessaly. There you will tell its lord, King Admetus, that he has a new slave, for Apollo will serve this mortal until I deem he is atoned for the elimination of my subjects. And if he disobeys even one order, he will be sent to meet his grandfather in the depths of Gaia. I stand over Apollo, and looking down at him, I roar, "Do you accept your punishment?" Gathering the last of his strength, he looks at me and nods solemnly. Leto smiles with gratitude. Ares bows, demonstrating his obedience, grabs Apollo by his tunic, and drags him from the hall, leaving a thick trail of ichor behind them, and the court finally exhales. After this demonstration, the youth now know of my power. If any of them even think to defy me, they will remember this moment. All of them. For now, it is over. Now I can return to my chambers to properly mourn the loss of the most noble and gentle soul ever to walk the earth or the heavens. I return to mourn the grandson I struck down. I return to mourn Asclepius. What happened next? Well, that's another story entirely. When we hear the name Apollo today, the image of the radiant god of the sun racing across the sky in a golden chariot instantly springs to mind. However, this portrait, reproduced over centuries, is but a pale shadow of the complex and multifaceted figure worshipped by the ancient Greeks. In ancient times, his essence was far more enigmatic and frightening. He was a deity who performed his greatest deeds under the cover of night, hidden in the darkness, from where he sent his merciless arrows upon the Greek troops besieging Troy. He could, with a single wish, summon a favorable wind for weary sailors, or inflict devastating epidemics on those who incurred his wrath. To those he blessed, he granted robust health and long life, but for those whose time had come, his arrows brought swift and inescapable end. He was invoked for help in the heat of battle, implored to guide the spears and darts of heroes accurately to their target, or conversely, to deflect the weapons of enemies. He was a formidable dragon slayer and a mighty protector against evil, the twin brother of the virgin huntress Artemis. He was responsible for protecting the harvest, patronized the arts, was a celestial shepherd, in love with trees and nature itself. He was called the god of wolves and ravens, and could even assume the form of a dolphin, in whose honor his most sacred sanctuary, Delphi, was named. This place, which the ancient Greeks considered the very center of the universe, became the source from which he uttered prophetic wisdom, bestowed upon him by his father, Zeus himself. It was these prophecies that brought him fame throughout the Western world. So what is the true nature of this most famous, yet one of the least understood gods of the Olympian pantheon? In the most ancient Greek sources that have come down to us, the Iliad and the Odyssey, there is practically no indication that Apollo was considered the direct equivalent of the sun god Helios. Nevertheless, he was invariably called Phoebus, which means bright, shining, radiant. It is from this epithet that the word phoebazo comes, meaning to prophesy. The story of his birth is full of drama and divine wrath. Apollo was conceived by Zeus and born to Leto, but the queen of the gods, Hera, upon learning of her husband's latest infidelity, was filled with indescribable rage. She looked down from the heavens and laid a terrible curse. Leto was forbidden to give birth to her child in any place that was firmly connected to the earth, or in any corner of the world where the light of the sun fell. There seemed to be no escape. But there was one place that was neither solid land, nor sea, nor sky. It was the island of Delos, freely floating on the waves. Some traditions say that Leto arrived there, taking the form of a she-wolf, or accompanied by a pack of wolves. And we will return to this mysterious connection with wolves later. Other myths tell that she was brought to the island by the north wind Boreas. The island itself, however, showed hesitation. In its mythological consciousness, the words sounded, "I have heard that Apollo will be arrogant and proud, and therefore I am filled with great fear in my heart and spirit, that as soon as he sees the light of the sun, he will despise this island." Note, there is already a clear connection between Apollo and the light of the sun. But Leto gave a sacred oath that a magnificent temple would be erected on this island in honor of the mighty god who would be born there, which would bring great fame and prosperity to this place. And the island agreed. In other versions of the myth, Poseidon, taking pity on Leto, temporarily submerged the island underwater so that it would not be within reach of the sun's rays, and raised it again only at the right moment. This connection between Apollo and Poseidon will be traced in many other myths, highlighting their complex interaction. All the goddesses gathered for the birth, except, of course, Hera. In her fury, she tried to hold back Ilithyia, the goddess of childbirth, to prevent Leto from giving birth. but she was tricked by offering her a magnificent necklace of amber 9 yards long. The symbolism of the number 9 constantly arises in the myth of Apollo's birth. According to some sources, Leto suffered in childbirth for 9 days and 9 nights. The fact that the necklace was made of amber also directly connects him to Apollo. Later stories state that Apollo's tears, shed for Asclepius, turned into amber and created the river Eridanus, surrounding the mythical land of Hyperborea, where all the world's reserves of amber were believed to be located. Finally, the god was born under a date palm. The name of this tree in Greek sounds like dactylos, which also means finger, but in this context, more importantly, refers to a unit of measure. For example, dactylic hexameter is the name of the classical Greek poetic meter in which the Iliad is written. That is why a palm tree became the place of his birth. Its very name is associated with the concept of measure, and therefore with poetry, harmony, and distance. He was also born by a stream called Inopos, which possibly means strong voice, born among the rocks under the roar of the sea surf, symbolizing the sound of wind and waves. As soon as he was born, the island of Delos became firmly rooted on the earth and ceased to wander the sea. Some versions even say that everything around turned to pure gold, and snow-white swans swirled around the island in a dance. Hesiod writes that at birth he held a golden sword in his hand, an attribute also possessed by Hermes and gods associated with light and the sun in the ancient Indian Rig Veda. After the first sip of ambrosia, which Themis, the goddess of divine law, fed him, he turned into a strong and beautiful youth of unprecedented beauty. As soon as the nectar touched his lips, his strength burst forth. No swaddling clothes could hold him, and he loudly proclaimed that he would be the master of archery, the master of playing the lyre, and would interpret Zeus' will and proclaim it to the people. The fact that it was Themis, the goddess of order, who first fed him demonstrates his inextricable connection with divine law, as do the 3 powers he proclaimed at birth. Archery is associated with the concept of distance, with overcoming it, and with focusing on a target in order to strike it from afar. The lyre represents music, cosmic harmony, and the expression of divine law, and the will of Zeus is the mind of the supreme consciousness of the heavens, knowledge of which is achieved through enlightenment of the mind. Soon after, Apollo received from Hephaestus, the divine blacksmith, his great silver bow as a gift. The very same Hephaestus is known to have forged both the lightning bolts for Zeus and the armor for many heroes. Apollo's arrows were believed to be somehow related to fire and light, and the Homeric hymn draws a similar parallel, calling the bright light from a fire lit by Apollo his arrows. It is said that all the gods tremble with fear before this bow when Apollo enters the halls of Zeus. Only Leto, his mother, remains serene at the sight of her son. She approaches him and disarms him, taking the bow and quiver from his shoulders, and only when he is disarmed, with a lyre in his hands, can the gods relax in his presence. The arrows of this bow were often deadly, sometimes causing instant destruction, and sometimes epidemics. In rare cases, Apollo was said to hurl his arrows like lightning bolts, but usually they struck a person's body. It was believed that if someone fell dead suddenly, without any apparent reason, then he was struck by the far-striking Apollo. From Zeus, he received a golden chariot harnessed by swans as a gift, which carried him across the sky. This connection with swans is very stable and may be related to artifacts found in Delphi that predate Homer's writings by several hundred years. Judging by archaeological finds, this sanctuary was heavily influenced by the Hallstatt culture, possibly even within a network of amber trade, which is reflected in the myths of Apollo and Helios. One of the most common motifs of the Hallstatt culture was the symbol of a double or triple waterfowl. It is quite possible that a number of ideas and motifs surrounding Apollo were influenced by the god of the Hallstatt culture, which is archaeologically confirmed in the earliest stages of the existence of Delphi, the most important center of the cult of Apollo. It is also possible that these people are the very ones whom the Greek myths call the Hyperboreans, with whom Apollo was closely associated. Some say that Apollo was raised by 3 nymph bees who knew the art of divination, and that he learned the art of construction from them and honed his prophetic skills, as well as grazing cattle. His connection with the protection of herds and flocks is perhaps one of the reasons why he is associated with the wolf, as a protector of herds from the wolf. However, one of Apollo's first great deeds was the destruction of a dragon named Python. In various sources, he was called either the spouse of Typhon, the monster that his father Zeus had to fight and defeat in a difficult battle, or he was said to have been sent by Hera to pursue Leto when she was rushing about in search of a place to give birth. Apollo was eager to avenge him. This is a common theme associated with this god. In other accounts, it was simply a vile monster guarding the place of Delphi, where the god wanted to found his temple. Striking him with 100 arrows, he rejoiced, saying, "Here the earth and shining Hyperion will cause you to rot." Then he came across a spring that was hidden, and broke the stones covering it, freeing the waters and causing them to flow in a beautiful stream to the sea. Then, wanting people to build him a great temple there, he noticed a ship at sea and approached it in the guise of a dolphin. A mysterious wind picked up the ship, carrying the people and the dolphin, and they landed ashore not far from this place. The dolphin soared up like a star at noon, and flashes of fire with a brightness reaching the heavens illuminated everything around. Then he lit a fire at the site of his sanctuary, demonstrating the magnificence of his arrows, and the light of this fire filled the entire district. But the people were terrified. And then he appeared to them again, already in the form of a man, and approached his unwilling sailors with a generous offer to stay here, build a temple, and receive great abundance in the name of the god. Thus this place was named Delphi, in honor of the dolphin appearance he took to acquire his first priests. To them, he bestowed knowledge of the immortal gods and of what was yet to come. Although the dragon is presented as some kind of malicious creature, it is curious that it is located in a place considered the center of the earth. In this sense, it may be related to a very ancient myth of a dragon located at the roots of the world tree, growing from the center. Various scholars suggest that the myth of how Apollo replaced Gaia in this place represents a later displacement of the Greeks of an earlier, pre-Greek, of an earth goddess cult. More likely, this is not the case. In Indo-European mythology, gods associated with the sky and consciousness often take control of aspects of the material cosmos. Often, this has nothing to do with replacing previous gods, but represents the idea of the primacy of consciousness or spirit over things or places. Early female figurines are sometimes offered in support of this argument, but in reality, they come from the site of the nearby temple of Athena and are almost certainly early votive offerings to her or a goddess related to her. Thus, while often mentioned, the idea that Apollo supplanted an earlier earth goddess at the site is not supported by evidence. The legend is part of a cosmological understanding of Apollo's development. First, Earth ruled, which was in the beginning. Then there was Themis, the goddess of natural law, directly associated with Apollo. Then there was Phoebe, Apollo's grandmother, who then passed the site to Apollo. In truth, this is just another way of showing Apollo's connection to prophecy, divine law, and mental illumination, not unlike his actual genealogy. Another popular myth that should be dispelled is that the Pythian priestess sat over a crack in the earth from which gas seeped, and this caused her visions. This idea is associated with sensational articles that appeared after it was discovered that there is indeed such a crack near the site. But it is unlikely that gas seeped into the temple at any time when the temple was active, and even if it ever did seep, there is no evidence that it did. There is simply evidence that there is some locked gas underground in this area, but no evidence that this gas came out or that it was related to the site in any way. So, having cleared that up, immediately after the dragon is slain, Apollo releases the pent-up water and creates a spring, which fits the general motif of dragon slaying found in later European sources. But it also connects him to a persistent theme of the flow. The places that are said to bring Apollo pleasure are all mountain peaks and high headlands of tall hills and rivers flowing from the depths and beaches sloping to the sea and harbors open to the sea. These are your delight. He is described as being born on Mount Cynthus, on that rocky island surrounded by the sea, Delos, while on either side the dark wave rolled in to land driven by shrill winds, whence arising you rule over all mortal men. There is no question that he was associated with the wind, as various myths about him show, but not as the wind itself, but rather as one who acts through the wind, which is linked to spatial distance, striking from afar, and the movement of light that travels or is born through the wind. Gods of the wind are born of the god of constellations and the goddess of the dawn, and are probably seen as carrying the light of the dawn across the world. But the wind itself, born in the high heavens. Thus, Boreas was said to have brought Leto to Delos, and several of his sons were said to be priests of Apollo in Hyperborea. Apollo also had a rivalry over the love of a flower with Zephyr, the god of the west wind, associated with growing plants in the spring. Apollo wins, but then ruins his love with a miscast throw, knocked off course by the wind in revenge, a major misfortune for any archer. After the slaying of Python, some stories tell of how Gaia was angered by the killing of her child. She threatened the cities of the earth with darkness and took from Apollo the gift of prophecy, replacing it instead with dreams that were received by people sleeping on the earth. The young Apollo went to his father for help, and Zeus, with a flick of his hair, restored his powers and dispelled the truth received from the darkness. While this particular myth is thought to be linked to the replacement of an earlier earth goddess cult, it actually seems to attack a cult associated with Zeus himself. In the Iliad, we are told that special priests of Zeus at Dodona slept on the ground and walked barefoot in order to receive prophecies, possibly in dreams, from Zeus, who was associated with a sacred oak. This site remained an important oracle, possibly until the 4th century AD, but the practice described sounds exactly like what took place at Dodona and was associated with Zeus, not Gaia. Although Python was a monster, he was still the son of a goddess, and Apollo was found guilty of slaying him. Gaia wanted him sent to Tartarus, but Zeus ordered him instead to purify himself of the sin, banishing him from Olympus and making him serve as a slave to Admetus for, again, 9 years. He lived under Admetus, tending the cattle to which he became very attached, and later Apollo persuaded the Moirai to spare his life in exchange for the life of his wife, allowing him to live longer. Once the term of service of the offending god was over, Zeus himself performed a ritual of purification on him in the waters of the Peneus River. However, the trials of this young god were far from over. Still full of hatred for Leto, Hera called upon the giant Tityos for help. She sent him after the mother of the twins to abuse her on her way from Delos to Delphi. The giant seized her and was about to carry her off, and woe would have befallen her if her son had not been Apollo. The young god rushed to her aid, unleashing his deadly arrows, and he was joined by his sister Artemis. Then Zeus cast the giant into Tartarus, pinning him to a rock on an area of, again, 9 acres. A pair of vultures pecks at his liver daily, but it grows back every night, so the torment will last forever. Apollo again comes to the defense of his mother and her honor when he learns of the pride of Niobe. The mortal woman boasted that she was superior to Leto because she had 14 children, while Leto had only 2. She dared to claim that Apollo was effeminate and Artemis was masculine. Apollo exterminated all of Niobe's sons, and Artemis all of her daughters, except for Chloris and Amyclus, who begged the gods to spare them. Their father, Amphion, is said to have either committed suicide or, in a rage, tried to attack Apollo and was slain. Niobe, weeping, turned to stone, and her tears became the Achelous River. The Niobids remained unburied for, again, 9 days. When Chloris later had a son, Nestor, known from the Iliad, Apollo granted him the years he had taken from the Niobids, explaining why he was able to live so long. This story shows how Apollo punishes sin and pride, but also how Apollo and Artemis are connected to the lives and lifespans of men and women, which we will examine in more detail later. When Heracles seeks to purify himself from the murder of his family, he goes to Delphi to ask Apollo what he should do. It is then that Apollo changes his name from Alcides to Heracles and directs him on the path of the famous labors. After completing his mission, Heracles again commits murder and falls ill, supposedly from the sin he committed. He goes to Delphi again for an oracle, but the priestess does not give him an answer. Then he flies into a rage and tries to steal Apollo's tripod, symbolizing his prophetic powers. The 2 gods begin to fight over it, Apollo supported by Artemis and Heracles by Athena. The scuffle is resolved by Zeus, who demands that Heracles return the tripod and also receive the oracle. And this oracle tells him that he must be sold into slavery for a year, a win-win situation, it seems. Apollo was well known for his fierce side, and this is perhaps nowhere so vividly highlighted as in his musical contest with Marsyas. As the legend goes, Athena invented the aulos, a type of double flute, but when she realized how her cheeks puffed out when she played it, she threw it away and placed a curse that anyone who picked it up would be punished. Marsyas came across the flute, picked it up, and began to master the instrument, until he became such a fine player that he challenged Apollo to a musical contest. When Apollo won, he ordered Marsyas to be hung on a tree and flayed alive. His blood created the Marsyas River. As harsh as this is, it is linked to a common theme around the god as one who punishes wrongdoing or pride, and it is this aspect that links him to one of his most famous deeds in the Iliad, the plague that he inflicts on the Danaan troops. The cause was an insult to the god committed by Agamemnon, who refused the ransom for one of his priests and insulted him. Apollo retaliated with a vengeance, demanding punishment until atonement was made. This punishment and atonement can be found in many tales of Apollo. He can release people from their transgressions, but he also punishes them for them. Apollo is also a god with many tragic love stories, and these lovers are sometimes personifications of plants, animals, or songs. Chief among them are the 9 muses, but also Acacalida, Narcissus, Daphne, Laurel Tree, Chrysothemis, Golden Natural Law, who is associated with agriculture, as well as Cronus, Crow, Hyacinth, and many others. Overall, in worship in certain areas, Apollo is strongly linked to agriculture and harvests. One of his biggest festivals, the Carneia, is associated with the harvest, and Apollo is generally the protector of crops, fields, and herds. It is perhaps through this role that he became known as Lycaos, the wolf god. As the guardian of the herds, he is a protector against wolves, but against those who have offended the god, he may well set the wolves on their herds. This aspect of guardian of the fields may be linked to one of his most interesting myths, the passing of Asclepius and the extermination of the Cyclopes, which combines almost all of the main aspects we have seen so far. Asclepius is said to have been the son of Apollo and the nymph Coronis, whose name is associated with the crow, and was a very gifted mortal physician who became so skilled in his craft that he could extend life and even bring people back from oblivion. However, the ability to bring back those who had passed on violated the natural order, and so Zeus struck him down with a thunderbolt. However, as in all cases where someone associated with Apollo is subjected to injustice, it does not go unpunished. Although he would not seek revenge against his father Zeus, Apollo instead punished the smiths of his lightning, the Cyclopes. He struck them with his far-striking arrows and then hid his weapons under a mountain in the north, perhaps hinting at a volcano, and again suggesting a fiery aspect to these arrows. Zeus learns of this and decides to make Asclepius the god of health and medicine, representing him in the sky as the constellation Ophiuchus. In some versions of this myth, the return of Apollo's arrow is linked to the harvest of an abundant crop. A possible agrarian reading of this myth might be as follows. The good condition of crops that are in the process of ripening is threatened by stormy weather. Apollo scatters the storm clouds and drives away the thunder giants with his fiery arrows, creating the ideal weather for the final stages of cereal harvesting. Of course, it is no coincidence that it is Apollo who slays the primordial storm gods, and this is linked to his role in agriculture. But Apollo is also the father of Aristaeus, a rustic god of shepherds, beekeeping, medicinal herbs, and most interestingly, the Etesian winds. These are strong winds blowing from the north that are invoked to alleviate the scorching heat, epidemics, and diseases associated with the star Sirius. It was also said that Aristaeus relieved droughts, which links him to Zeus as a god of rain. Some sources say that he was the son of Uranus, but most consider him the son of Apollo, and probably, in more archaic times, it was believed that the far-striking one had more power over the sky and the weather in general than has survived in the traditions. To understand Apollo more deeply, we need to turn to the etymology of his name. Some believe that it means destroyer. Others see it as meaning one of the assembly, or link it to the pre-Greek Anatolian name Apollonius, the name of a god mentioned in a Hittite treaty, which may mean he who sets traps. Others look further east to Aplu, a god of plague who is the son of a sun god. I am personally most convinced by the argument that his name comes from Apella, which means declaration, boasting, or promise, as this is directly linked to one of his main functions as a god of prophetic utterances and fits perfectly into the genealogy provided by Hesiod and others. Thus, he is the son of Zeus and therefore the bright spirit of consciousness. His mother Leto, whose name possibly means unclear, hidden, or modest, is the sister of Asteria, which means fallen star, who fled from Zeus after the war with the Titans and became the island of Delos, the very island on which Apollo was born. She is a goddess of fallen stars and prophecies made by observing them. Thus, she is linked to nocturnal divination, and, apparently, her sister Leto is most likely her opposite, that is, linked to daytime divination, and therefore to light. This dualistic nature of the sisters, night and day, is, in a sense, perhaps reflected in Apollo and Artemis, who become linked to the sun and moon. But the nature of the maternal grandparents is often as or even more important to the nature of the grandchildren in these genealogies. Apollo is the grandson of Phoebe, which means the feminine version of Apollo's own common name, Phoebus. This means bright, shining, or radiant, as she was a titaness of enlightenment and prophecy and the central axis of the earth, Delphi, the daughter of Gaia and Uranus. His grandfather was Koios, which means request or question, but he is also identified with Polos, which means the central axis of the sky or the pole star. As one of the 4 Titan brothers holding Uranus, he is the personification of one of the 4 pillars supporting the sky, the northern pillar, and Apollo is also strongly linked to the north and Hyperborea. Both grandmother and grandfather and mother are linked to prophecy, and they are all linked to the central axis points. Phoebe is the goddess of the prophetic mind, and Koios is of the question. It seems likely that they are the Titans, representing the cosmic center from which all knowledge flows, but also around which the cosmos moves. The name Phoebe is used, probably not in connection with the light of the sun, but with brightness and enlightenment as a mental state, that which is revealed, or she who illuminates the mind. Apollo's place is in the center, either in Delphi or in Hyperborea, probably representing the North Pole. In Delphi, in the winter months, Apollo was believed to travel north, and his PR, the presence, was leaving the temple. This is strange for a sun god, as it actually moves south in winter, but its disappearance seems linked to the season. Perhaps he is departing north from the center of the earth to the center of the sky, where he rules the music of the cosmos, represented by the movement of the heavens and stars, more noticeable in winter with its long nights. Apollo may also be associated with the heat and light of the sun, just as the Homeric hymn calls the light of fire his arrows. With great insight, the Orphic hymn to Apollo refers to the sun as his eye and states that all differences in nature and their harmony are a result of Apollo's activity and that the seasons change according to his music, with the seasons represented as notes on his lyre. Thus, the flow and harmony of the world are attributed to Apollo as expressions of music. In Egypt, Apollo was associated not with Ra, the sun god, but with Horus, the god of the sky, whose eyes were the sun and moon, which may have influenced the Orphic description. His name means distant, similar to how Apollo is called far-striking. Yet, while some have argued that he was not originally associated with the sun, the Homeric hymn seems to hint at this connection, if not stated directly. Helios is mentioned several times in the hymn, and Apollo himself invokes Helios by his alternative name Hyperion, meaning High One, and his choice of this name may also be related to a desire to evoke the sense of distance with which he is associated. Clearly, he was not a physical manifestation of the sun, but a certain connection is undoubtedly established. Helios dispenses the light of the physical sun and governs its course across the sky. But Apollo has far broader associations, particularly with mental illumination, wholeness, distance, law, and harmony. The sun is only one part of Apollo's aspect. However, it is possible that Apollo was associated with the movement of the sun at an early stage, and this partly explains why he is associated with distance. The key point regarding the sun is its daily movement across the visible space. In Vedic sources, the god Vishnu was said to have created this space in 3 strides, and this was apparently the spatial distance measured by the movement of the sun. The god Savitar, sometimes identified with the sun and sometimes distinct from it, also seems to have been associated with this movement and the inspiration of the sun, his name meaning the impeller. He is strongly associated with punishment and cleansing of sin, an element also key to Apollo. Perhaps his rule from the center is related to this. It is from the center that all things extend outward and around which everything moves. Zeus was said to have measured the world by releasing 2 eagles from the edges, and where they met was Delphi, where the omphalos, or navel of the earth, was located, again associating this place, and therefore Apollo with the measurement of distance. Music is also closely associated with measurement, as is the movement of the sun and moon that traverse the world. The sun is said to measure the world, and so it is possible that Apollo was associated with at least this particular solar aspect in an ancient period. Apollo's connection to wolves may also have a strange and unlikely connection to this celestial movement. People have long sought an explanation for why Apollo is consistently associated with the wolf. In Delphi, there was a bronze statue of a wolf in front of his altar. It was said that his mother was in the form of a she-wolf or accompanied by wolves when he was born. Myth tells how he directed wolves to nurse Miletus from Crete. In Argos, the myth tells how Danos witnessed a fight between a wolf and a bull. He came to associate himself with the wolf, and when it was victorious, he took it as an omen from Apollo, and later built a temple to Apollo Lysias. When various followers were puzzled by this in later times and sought explanation in the brightness of the wolf's eyes or the appearance of the wolf at dawn, they were missing a deeper connection. In Norse mythology, the sun and moon are pursued or, in some cases, led by wolves. These wolves actually determine the movement of the sun and moon, impelling them on their flight across the heavens. Is this simply a coincidence? A key power associated with Apollo is inspiration or impelling in accordance with the dictates of harmony and law. Music is a primary force of such inspiration and mental illumination. According to Pythagoras, whom some consider to be the son of Apollo, everything in the world has a number, but this number is an expression of a musical note. The sun, moon, and stars were believed to have their own sound, and the cosmos ultimately consists of music. But music, if anything, is sound, and so as a god of music, Apollo cannot only be a god of light. For the most important thing about Apollo is that he is a god who not only knows the supreme cosmic consciousness of his father Zeus, but also proclaims it to man. These proclamations are made through speech, utterances, which brings us back to the possible meaning of his name, and also makes his genealogy understandable. If he is the grandson of Phoebe, the enlightened, and Coeus, the question, and the son of Leto, the hidden, then he is the one who actually gives these prophetic answers, but perhaps not in a straightforward manner, but hidden, masked, as his mother's name suggests. Apollo is the one who connects man with this higher, enlightened knowledge. One of his messages on the temple at Delphi read, "Know thyself." Perhaps this means, know your proper place in the world, an idea that goes back to the search for harmony, and this harmony, governed by Apollo, nevertheless seems to originate in the mind of Zeus and his intentions, which only Apollo knows. He can connect man with an understanding of Zeus, the supreme consciousness, through purity, inspiration, the mental light of spiritual practice, through art, music, and, of course, oracles. Nevertheless, his association with speech and sound, as well as the enlightenment of the soul, may be related to yet another of his aspects, health and departure from life. In archaic Greece, it was forbidden to create statues of people. Such images were only allowed for gods. The first violation of this ban was the creation of the Parthenon. However, before this time, wealthy people would set up generic images of the deceased, a young beardless man or a young woman, known as Kouros and Kore. It is believed that these statues are actually images of gods, Apollo and Artemis, who symbolize the souls of the departed. Old men and even infants have been found buried with these Korai, so it cannot be that they were meant to represent a specific person. This also explains why men and women struck down by sudden, unknown causes were said to have been struck by the arrows of Apollo or Artemis, for they could separate the spirit of a person from his body. Perhaps Apollo and Artemis represent the individual soul of man and woman. In any case, it seems that they can decide the time of a person's departure from life and even negotiate with the Moirae to extend a person's life beyond his natural years. Or perhaps their influence on a person's soul is capable of sustaining him in life by their grace. The health of the body was believed to depend on a delicate balance of various elements within, and this harmony is something associated with Apollo. However, a person's health was also influenced by things like sin, as demonstrated in various myths, including those surrounding Heracles. Apollo imposes this punishment in the form of his arrow, and yet he can also release from sin through purification. Apollo's birds, the raven and the swan, also have peculiar associations. The raven is a bird of prophecy, associated with the passing and the souls of the departed. In the northern tradition, it is associated with Odin, where, as with Apollo, he is said to observe things on behalf of the god. Ravens are also the most intelligent of birds, more intelligent than even most monkeys. They were thought to possess the wisdom of the spiritual world because they were in close connection with the other world, and it is from this other realm that great knowledge is obtained. But the raven was also associated with wind and air. Consider the Mithraic cult that spread throughout Europe in the Roman period. Mithras is almost always depicted with a raven behind him, above his billowing cloak in the air, and it is likely that the raven here represents the wind or air, with the raven potentially acting as a mediator or messenger between the soul and Mithras, judging by its placement. Apollo, according to some versions of the myth, turns the raven's feathers black, and this is apparently because the bird was scorched. The swan is another bird of Apollo. A chariot drawn by swans was given to him by his father Zeus. The symbolism is connected to another pair of twins, Castor and Pollux, who were born from a swan's egg after Zeus seduced their mother in the form of a swan. Originally, the Dioscuri were probably associated with guiding the sun. Cycnus, the swan, in another myth, was a good friend of Phaeton, the mortal son of Helios. When Zeus struck him down for almost burning the earth to a cinder, Cycnus was heartbroken and composed a mournful song for his friend. When Zeus heard it, he turned him into a constellation. Thus, when Apollo has swans to draw his chariot, an obvious solar connection is made here, because many myths involving swans are directly related to light or the sun. The origin of this is apparently Hyperborean, that is, from the Hallstatt culture and its symbolism of waterfowl in connection with the solar disk. However, there is another strange connection between the swan and music. The swan is not a particularly good singer, which is brought to attention in these tales, drawing attention to their voice. Usually, the swan is rather silent, and when they do make a sound, it is not much different from the sound of a duck. But there is a connection between the singing of the swan and its last hour. It is assumed that the swan sings beautifully after it is gone, and this seems to be hinted at in the tale of Zeus and the swan just mentioned. There is also a connection between the Dioscuri and the completion of life and the passing of the son of Helios. The Homeric hymn says, "Phoebus, even the swan sings of thee in a clear voice under the beat of its wings." The key word here is even the swan. The idea of sound and song may also be partly the reason for the association with Apollo, but the sun itself, in most archaic sources, was associated with passage into the other world. The souls of the departed were associated with the sun, and it was the gods associated with the sun who, in Vedic sources, accompanied souls after their departure. Solar symbols also appear on Romano-British burials. This is partly because, as a source of energy in the visible world, the sun is a gateway for the spirit, but also because the sun sets at night in the west, figuratively speaking, fading away there. Thus, from Ireland to Greece, the west was the place of the blessed departed, who reside in bliss in the sunny land. Pindar says that the righteous go to that land after their third life, and that they get there by following the road of Zeus to the tower of Cronus. This apparently means the path of the sun to the place where time resides, or rather ends, since the sun is also the one who measures time, according to some accounts, the father of Horus, which is otherwise an honor belonging to Cronus. Much more could be said about Apollo, who is one of the most complex of all the Greek gods due to his numerous and varied associations. Nevertheless, his core associations are with prophecy, inspiration, the soul, distance, enlightenment, purification, music, and harmony. Most of his tales can be explained through his connection to these concepts, all of which are interconnected in a cosmological sense. Apollo is above the sun because he is the master of cosmic order, the one who organizes the universe according to the higher laws of harmony and divine will.